I don't know if I went too far, if I said something I shouldn't have said, did something I shouldn't have did. Like I don't run this country, and like I said, my mom, she could have helped Jennifer Pan. It does start in the household. Um, and like, again, like the strictness of her parents, but not only her parents, but the system itself. Now we've all been criticizing since 2012. Like everybody was criticizing it, but we didn't get anywhere, like we are where we are right now. Um, Everybody is just kind of shrugging their shoulders at that. Um, no, but really, like, we are where we are in terms of the system. Uh, I, like, of course, is like, there's grievances. I have my own personal grievances with my grandfather and all those things. But like I said, you don't know if you're going too far or not. You don't know if you said something that that you shouldn't have said, and bothered the person in a way you shouldn't have bothered them. Because it's like, if the system is too strict, then there's probably definitely doing too much, right? We can agree on that objectively, but when you look at okay, the system is doing too much, we know that, right? And the parents, would reflect that. So your parents are happen to just be too strict, and based off the system. But then there's the other thing where it's like, the person, lets go of themselves and they're not strict enough on their diet, or like they're eating, whatever, and they're not strict enough, and they're not strict enough on like maybe their grades and their discipline and their behavior, like their criminal behavior. And with the way things are going, like with everything happening simultaneously at once and all these problems and people, it's hard to make a definitive conclusion. I don't want to make a conclusion at this point, because at this point you don't know who, when, where, what, how, or why. Like, these people are spawning out of nowhere, if I had to be honest, um and like I don't know, if you grew up in the Americas, like North America, South America, everything is pretty much an issue here, because it's all built on the backs of indigenous peoples. So obviously, like, there's loads of issues, and it's pretty tragic. um you know um and like it would have to go to the past. There's so many issues, but the first issue was Columbus landing. That was the first issue. And I talking with the guy, and he was supposed to land in India, so he didn't land there. So he that was like the first issue. And then everything else that happened. And you know the actors, and I mentioned the movies and evil Hollywood, and everybody knows this, but for some reason nobody boycotted them, nobody fought with them. And I don't care who. It doesn't need to be a fucking known actor. It can be some Joe Schmo they found on the street, and they try to help the homeless, and then whatever happened. No, because I don't approve of America and Americans and their philosophy, and their their interracial marriage. I'm not talking about black or white. I'm talking about like interracial, like Irish and English, or Irish and Mexican, and Mexican could be like Spanish Mexican, or like Amerindian, and like, because I already said, I didn't mention black or white. I'm talking about races, and like, as in like particular ethnic groups. And like I'm going back to the guy's name, Dean Witcher, and all these people. I feel terribly bad for them, because again, like, all that happened is that they got a little bit lost in the system, and that's it. And I already criticized the system 4 years ago, 13, 14, like, some odd years ago, 2012. I already criticized the system, and I don't ever like leeway off that. I mean, I think everybody was criticizing the system. I mean, and I'm not talking like, oh, I didn't want to go to school and all that. I'm talking about like, just talking about like how many years you spend in the school. And I get it. Like, we're not sending children to become doctors, or sending them off to like conflicts. And again, like, I'm not the last person who'd be telling people what to do, but like, we're not sending them off to these conflicts because of one reason or another. Oh my god, fucking walking out here and it's fucking, I'm losing breath. I don't know if it's humid or... We're not sending them off to these conflicts, and we're not, because nobody takes a child doctor seriously, and I get that. Like, I get that perspective, right? There's perspectives I can get. I can get something. I can understand the perspective, but I don't need to agree with it, right? Like, I don't and I don't agree with it because when you have a doctor shortage, the child being a doctor is like the least of your problems, especially in a country that's falling apart. But then again, at this point, it's way too late in the game. It's way too late in the game, I mean, as far as the people who've had it all figured out and they know what to say and they know when to say it, I'm not talking about them, and if they're going to talk about canceling people, canceling me, I get that. I get that, there's things that I say, Gay History Month and all these things. I get that, but you should be really like, okay, I get you can cancel me, right? Like, but I'm only trying to provoke a dialogue about these things and trying to bring up awareness that I've IQ. And I know the old saying, if you don't know what to say, don't say anything at all, or if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, or treat others the way you want to be treated. Or my grandmother, she used to say, silence is like gold. And I mean, if you don't have anything nice to say, or if you don't know what to say, right, like, don't say anything at all. But the thing is then nobody's talking, right? Then there's no dialogue, and I guess progress can't be made. Progress can't be made because people are, they're in themselves, and they made conclusions, and they just proceed forward with their lives, right? And I don't go by that, that factor. I don't go by that factor. And again, I'm sensitive in what I say and do, because the initial truth was the code of silence, right? Like, you're not supposed to be saying anything, right? Because if you knew what to do, you wouldn't have to say anything. You would just do it, and that's the way I see it. And I'm not going to see it any differently. I'm not going to change my ways. I'm very stubborn, and I'm never going to be having a house and doing all these things because of these mistakes. Very, very serious mistakes. Like, even walking can be a serious mistake. And this is why these things aren't changing. They will never change. And you need to be strict about that, because, you could judge, okay, he said Gay History Month and he posted the video. And I hope I posted all these things in time, like years ago, back before the world was actually ending, not like in like 2012 is like, okay, that's like a world ending light version, that's like the Bud Light version, the world ending, or that's like the pseudo world ending. So it's not like the real thing. But then like in 2026, we obviously see that the world has ended already, like 4 years ago. I mean, even on my vegetarian diet, like, I've already eaten meat, right? Once you eat that meat, the possibility that it was a human being, or that the possibility that what you ate was a human being, and somebody taking it literally, and some asshole, who wants to discredit you and to put you in a certain position or make you come off a certain way, they could do that, and they will do that if they need to undermine you, and your evil politicians will do it. Anybody will do that. And people being evil, like I think the light will always conquer the darkness, but I don't mean that in like a human way, like, because people are going to say, when you say dark, you're talking about black people. No, I'm talking about like the dark, like it being dark. And you have to take everything I say literally, and you should, because in the year 2026 we can't afford little conversations where something can be not taken literally, and then someone gets offended, and then conflict just erupts. Any little thing will set people off. So I'm just being careful, and I'm just telling the truth here. And again, I would have never left my house had I known that the world would come to this point where everything is sensitive, and any loud noise, any problem, everything falls apart. And so, you know, even the words you speak and all that, all a problem. You know, I managed to grow up in Toronto, and I make it to this point where you know these things are happening, um and you know I still have a say, right? And I hear sirens every day, right? I don't know who or what is happening, but sirens going off every day, every hour. I mean, that's the way it is in Ottawa. It was like that in Oshawa not too long ago. um like I said, like I hope these people, Dean Witcher and Robbie Alkalil and all these people, I hope they're doing good, because I feel bad for them. You know, I feel bad that, you know, like their lives were destroyed by the system. I feel bad that my mom didn't intervene. All it would have taken was my mom intervening and talking to these people, and guiding them through the University of Toronto process, because the person doesn't know what's going on. You know, Jennifer Pan didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know what was going on. All my mom had to do was guide her and offer free housing, right? And this is the whole tragedy. This is the crux of these videos and why they're being made, because yes, on top of all the other issues that everybody else will typically list, they're very serious too, right? Single parent household, single parent like black household. You know, I listen to these issues, and as a white person per se, you know, I'm from Central Asia, but still, white person per se, like I don't, you know, I listen to all the issues. I feel bad. You know, I wouldn't portray one side or the other, and I already know that like other people will exploit other people to do their tests and to do their maneuvers or tests, their, you know, whatever. They'll do it because, you know, they'll do it because the history shows, like especially like in post-secondary institutions. And I mean, I guess maybe that's why they don't do any more experiments and research, and that's how the way it should be, because I heard that they were like experimenting on animals in one Ontario hospital. But I'm at this point where I don't care, to the level I don't care, right? Like I'm so upset with what happened with my grandfather that I can't care. You know, I lost all my cares, and I'm just so upset and so shocked. And you know, the rest of the population wasn't crying, so I'm not crying either at their problems. And you know, like you know, I'm not crying at their problems either. You know, and again, like I am walking in here naively. I don't have a full team of people around me. I don't have a whole squadron. Um, you know, and you know, like having to fight with my parents because, you know, I know what I'm doing is right, and I know that they are in the wrong, and that, you know, they could have helped these people. They could have provided the housing. They could have done these things. It's a major tragedy and a shock, because, you know, the shelter could be life or death, and when it's like -35 like it is in Ottawa. And I feel bad for these people, like, you know, Dean Witcher and Ravi Al Khalil. Like, oh, they just got a little bit lost, and I don't believe they're truly evil, because if evil is like if evil is like a subjective or an objective statement, then, you know, it loses all credibility. Um, and it's very serious, because like these people had lives too. You know, they had lives, they had families, and they were normal at some point. But then, you know, like their lives collapsed, and that's why these conversations are happening, because, you know, you want to reverse what's happened. I think some of this stuff you can't reverse. You know, random attacks you can't reverse. It's like it's all the person knows, because they've been neglected so long, and nobody like really addressed what was the original issue. And a lot of people, they won't take it seriously, right? They don't take these types of videos seriously. They'll think, oh, you know, he's just acting, or he's the politician. Is like, they don't know if the politician is even being sincere or not. And I mean, I don't even know who the politicians are, the people running everything, and we don't even know who to trust and not to trust in the year 2026. You shouldn't even trust me, right? Because I'm not even showing my face in these videos. Hold on. And like I said, like, you know, you know, you don't know who to trust, which politicians and people. You know, like I know these videos, and every word I say pushes us closer to No, why am I saying us pushes me closer to the edge, closer to like closer like to this to this darkness that we're all heading into. Like, I mean, we all know it, there's all there, but um oh no, thing is, like I said, people like they're gonna end up like me, where they don't know anything that's going on. They don't even know that they're being humiliated when they're being talked to. They won't be able to process emotions at all because they don't even have a chance to interact, and all that. We're gonna arrest all the old people because of the CP they have, and because of their alleged rape allegations and sexual assault. And I'm not saying that these things didn't happen or don't happen. They absolutely do. I absolutely believe, it's terrible. But like, I don't know. Then like, who are we gonna trust? Okay, like our authority figures then are corrupted, and the old people are touching people and and all that. And I mean, I'm not saying it's every old person or it isn't, but it's just you look at it and you try to understand, like, you try to understand, who's responsible and who isn't, and because like these things, they're tragic, and you try to understand who's responsible and who's not. And I said, like, we can't afford these things. We can't even afford to turn on our TV or barely to post this video and to talk, right? Because there's just so many people and there's so many issues, and but again, like, I don't use that as an excuse to not to address the core issue of what I'm talking about. While I'm still alive, and because again, like some of these people, like Dean Wisher and all this, like they will randomly attack without without warning, right? And so you want to know who it is, at least, and at the least you want, like, I don't know, I feel so upset. I feel so upset that things are the way they are. You feel so upset that because the thing is, like, again, I'm not some naive child anymore, right? Everything I say in these videos is coming from an adult who's been alive and experienced the world from 2001 to 2026. And you like you have the regrets, in the past, for those people, because again, like, all that had to happen was my mom manually helped them out. And there isn't enough manpower or psychological willpower to deal with this. And again, this isn't a computer game. I don't play the computer games anymore, and I know the consequences of the computer games now, because now that you're dealing with the real world, and I'm saying everything literally, right? The person might have taken it literally back in the day, right? They might have done whatever because of the computer game or because of the video game. And and not to mention Amanda Todd, or the other woman who died by Cody Lebogotchakov, whoever. He's a horrible, terrible person. He happens to be Russian. He's a horrible person. He's rotting in prison, and probably deserves to die, if I had to be honest. Like, he should have been for death penalty, what he did. Again, horrible tragedies that occurred throughout the last 25 years I've been alive. I didn't know about all of them. My parents, they didn't talk about it. And I know, I didn't know these things were happening, and now I understand why it's so complicated to to do any job, whether you want to be a police officer or a lawyer or a doctor. In Canada, it is very difficult, like, with all the bureaucracies and the laws and all these things. You're better off helping yourself or your friends, really, if your friends respect you enough. And I said it, I'd let 50 people, homeless people, live with me if they would respect me enough to do it. Because again, like, nobody really respects me, right? And that's the whole basis of the issue, right? And like, I don't control behavior, like I said. Like, I don't control the country. I'm not some elite politician. I'm not, like, I'm only responsible for what I say and what I do personally. And And I'm only responsible for what I say and what I do. And I know, like, even my mom, right? And I'm not talking about the things that I said, right? Because I could have been solid in what I said, but it's what I did that that bothers me. And my mom too. Like, I have to, I had to manually look into this and really be like, my mom could have helped. She could have said something, right? Right. The other people at the UFT, right? They didn't have to, right? They didn't need to help these people, or maybe some of them are selfish, right? Evil people exist, but just because evil people don't help or don't do anything doesn't mean that I couldn't have and shouldn't have. Because the thing is, like, I could have been one of those people, right? Even my mom, she neglects me. She hates me. Like, I hate my mother. We have a terrible relationship, and I can see why. Like, and the horrible part is all these, like, some of these responsibilities then kind of come onto me, and like, maybe what your parents do might reflect on you, and I don't believe anything that my parents do reflect on me, right? Like, I don't think it reflects upon me, but you know I don't know if I'm a full person. What I mean by that is, like, sometimes you get the thoughts in your head, and I don't know, I truly believe some of these people are spawning in out of nowhere, and to some extent, like, this is like a simulation or a computer game proven by the Buddha, the Quran saying that's a dunya, and even by the Bible, the material world being evil and some kind of simulation. But, like, being serious here and being honest, you need to look at it from the perspective, like, okay, like, we're looking at it, like, through the lens that, like, like, obviously I would give up my land, heartbeat, right? Like, because I already bought my tent. I already know where I'm going to be going after I graduate Algonquin College. It's like, what, 1 month and like 10 days, right? 1 month, 10 days. Because again, I'm probably addressing myself and a lot of other people, right? Because, like, again, you snooze, you lose culture, where, if you don't adopt the latest technology, or if you don't know what's going on, then, you're suddenly deemed irresponsible, irresponsible, immature, and all these things. And I get it. To some extent, it is true, like, but then again, if a person's not even aware, they don't even have emotional capacities, and you're not even given a chance. I said it. If you're not even given a chance to go out there and make mistakes, and talk to people, and be insulted, and even you're not even given a chance to be insulted, and you're not even given a chance to like, you even ruin your own life or something, like, that's when I take an issue, because you're not even giving the person a chance to, like, change themselves. You're not giving them a chance to you're not even giving them a chance to, like, emotionally develop, or, like, to make the poor decision, or to, like, all these things, right? And I'm making sure, like again, I don't tell people what to do. I'm only responsible for myself. I could take the blame for somebody else if all things go to, like, all to the shitter. But then again, it's for who, right? It's for who and how, because if there's no authority figure to even arrest you, because it's very difficult to do any of these jobs, and the bureaucracy and the problems, and then it defeats the purpose of pretty much everything, because it's practically impossible to even function in a society in a healthy way, right? And all this time I'm doing these things, excuse me, just to survive, all these things just to survive, and the final output of myself to the society is null. It's nil. I haven't produced anything. You're not even given a chance to produce anything, because you're told it's wrong. Everything you're doing is wrong, and so I don't know what the purpose of all this ends up becoming, because if people can't even produce a product or start a business and fail, and just at least know that, okay, I started the business but I failed, I tried but I failed, I just, it's hard for me to even put this to words, and like, again, like, I'm no perfect guy. I'd put myself on a Chris Hansen episode because I deem myself to be worse than some of those people because of some of the things that have occurred in the years. And I said, like, if America, like Americans will typically be like, oh no, we judge individuals, right? Like we don't judge the whole society, right? There's good and bad apples, but the issue with that is that you're using that as an excuse to move on, right? I don't move on. I never move on, and I'm never going to move on, because if we move on now, it's only going to get worse. Because just like in that computer game Fallout, the saying goes, war never changes. That's all that's going to happen. It's going to be the same conflict over the same thing, over the same point of conflict, except it's going to be with even worse weapons and worse problems. So like like me playing the computer games, that's on me. Like, I know it does a number on you, and nobody obligates you to play these computer games as well as watch those movies or whatever. And where they came from and who produced them, excuse me, where they came from and who produced them, and where they came from, who produced them, and how they came about. Obviously, those are all questions. And like, I know that there's people who took advantage of me, even without even talking or whatever, because it was easy. It was such an easy target, because the person's mom is traveling to these places, and every time she travels to these places, I mean, I'm not saying every time, but like, when she travels to those places, chances are that things, like, maybe bad people slip through, or certain things are happening. And again, I didn't want things to be this way. I truly, sincerely didn't think things would turn out this way. I was totally naive on that end. I expected things to be different. Because, like, the thing is, like, again, I could be talking about different people in the same society, living in the same house, who don't even know that they live in the same house, that they're in the same house. We're talking about different dimensions and multiple people and things happening at once, and different dimensions, because I don't know. At this point, you don't know. These people seem to be coming out of nowhere, spawning out of, like, nowhere, and all this, like, portals in the sky, and the Miami Mall incident, and all these things. And it's horrible, because it's like you can't even keep track of what's going on. You don't even know who's fighting who and what's the reason for the fight. And again, it only takes one loud noise to get someone to be completely pissed off. Why am I credible? Why should you listen to any of these videos and anything I say? I don't know. Because I already said, I'm not, like, I could be populist, right? I could be the popular one out of all the people who actually have committed crime, even though I don't agree with any of the system and how they got caught. But per se, they're in the system, they committed crime. So then, just by popular, by the popular vote, I would be better. I'd be more favorable than those people, right? By classism, by the concept of classism, and income and classism and popularity, and the fact that I'm still alive. I didn't catch some disease. Wasn't born with some disease. So you take all these things into account. Okay, so now people are kind of listening to me because I have something to say, and maybe the message resonates with them. Maybe they really understand what I'm saying, and they all that. Again, like, I feel bad for the people watching these videos, because obviously, it's too late in the game, and I hate to say the word game. No, it's too late. Because again, I don't even know what you can or can't say. I don't want to, like, I'm using old mentality on, like, an entirely new scenario in 2026 with entirely new and different problems, right? And I like, anyone like with a brain, and a cell phone can make a video like this. Johnny Junkie could have made it, and I think Johnny Junkie is better than me, because again, my parents probably took advantage of a crisis. They took advantage of white and black people fighting, and people, like, I'm gonna say goy slop and goyums that got paralyzed by it. And I've seen it. A person gets paralyzed by these things. They get paralyzed by it. It destroys them. They don't even realize that they were being tricked, and that their soul was slowly being taken by the computer game, or I don't know, the machine, or whatever capitalist thing they that took their soul, right? No, these videos are being made way too late. I'm sorry. Again, if you're seeing this, I'm sorry. You're watching this way too late. Um, you know, Russia threatens the world with its nukes. Israel is threatening Palestine and Iran and the thing there. I'm the last person that the people should be listening to, right? Because I'm like Dean Wittrin Al Khalil. If this was 2012 or 2014, it would have been a relevant conversation. It would have been relevant to say that the system doesn't work, and that we don't have family doctors, and we don't have any of these people. And like, again, like it's too late. Like, obviously I have good intentions in these videos, and I mean, I knew the system didn't work, and many of my peers would criticize it, but nobody did anything other than the trucker convoy in 2022, which is like 10 years after the fact, which means it loses all bearing, it loses all weight, and that's what makes it worse than a TCAT predator, right? Like Chris Hansen's TCAT predator. That's what makes it worse, because I don't sound sincere. I could do anything. I can go back in time. I could delay Columbus's voyage by 100 years, and it still wouldn't change the fact that right here, right now, at the crux, people deploying to Russia, Ukraine, people deploying to the Palestine, Israel. Like, I mean, no, Palestine, Israel is not. I have no dog in that fight, and I'm not ever gonna put myself in harm's way for battles that aren't involving me. But Russia, Ukraine was going on for years, and many Canadians already deployed there, right? Many Canadians already decided to go and fight. So for me, obviously, like, I feel bad. I feel bad, right? Like, I sincerely feel bad, right? Like, I don't laugh at night, I don't smile, and obviously I live a miserable life to some extent. And I feel terrible about it. And like I said, good and evil. Like, people are gonna call me mature, or you watch the movies, and that's how you see good and evil, or whatever have you would describe, right? I mean, the system works the way it does nowadays. Nobody did anything, right? Nobody did anything. Nobody really stood up. And I don't know. There was obviously an effort during the trucker convoy, like a noticeable effort, but again, I don't think they're addressing the system at its core, that you have to be in school for 22, 23 years, and obviously, like, it's difficult because this has been going on for years, and nobody's stood up to it. Uh, nobody stood up to it, and obviously nobody wants to fight. Nobody wants these issues and conflicts, and everybody can feel that something bad is going to happen, that there's like a big, massive bubble that's going to pop. Like, I don't mean housing crash. I mean like a psychological, and like a bubble of frustration that was gonna pop. That's gonna pop, and you don't know how it's gonna all end. And again, it all goes down to history, right? And like I said, like, alien reptilians, a bloodline of elites and royalty that truly controls the world. And the thing is, even like an average person, like, even like, we'll just say, like, not non-reptilian bloodline, like, you can control a person who has poor emotional control, like my mom. Like, she just does it because she thinks that she's in control. She thinks that that cheap deal to go to Cuba or to go to Dominican Republic, she thinks that it's a cheap deal, and all she has to do is just hop on the plane. But she doesn't see that that there's misery that those people are going through, and all they need is just, they want to go to somewhere else, Canada, right? Everybody comes to Canada trying to leave behind everything that was wrong with their countries there, and then they come here, and maybe they bring it with them, maybe they don't. I'm not putting it up against it, I'm not And again, to bring things to this point, everything I speak from is from my own life experience. I might be emotionally bringing something to the table that other people, they never bring to the table, and I don't want them to, and but there has to be a reason I'm still here, and I'm still able to talk, still able to like correlate myself. And I hate these movies. I hate how they mock the average person, their struggles. They really, like, yeah, they accurately depicted some things, but like American movies and TV shows and a lot of the shit that they have is just goy slop. It's terrible. And the people who created it, like, especially the ones who know what to say and want to say it, like in 1950s, 1960s, they're very crafty, and they're very, very, very sneaky, very, like, very despicable. Like they again, like, I don't live for like these little stimulations. I can go without stimulus for like 50, 60, 100 years. I'm not a shallow person, so like that's not what I do. That's not how I live my life. There are people like that who need lights to be moving, and they constantly need to be stimulated, like with TikTok and other ADHD goy slop. That's not me. And again, I've offered free housing. I've offered, I've offered to deploy. I've done everything. Like, I've done everything I could in my power to take control of the situation. But again, I'd still be asking the fundamental question of why are these conflicts occurring in the first, like, psychologically, like, it's just a black hole that, like, how can we have let this happen as a species again? And I don't know, you could say species, or how did humanity allow this to happen? And if you believe in a God or if you don't, and I don't even know. It's terrible, it's tragic. Doomerism and nihilism at its peak. No, because my parents divorced, back in like 1998. Unfortunately, things are the way they are. You don't even know who to trust, what not to trust, and you don't even know if it's real or not, because nobody's telling the truth. Everybody's lying, and like, I don't care, right? Like, okay, so something happened, bad happens to someone else. We'll let them deal with it however they deal with it. I'll deal with it the way I deal with it. When I got randomly attacked on the street corner, nobody helped me out, and so, like, obviously everybody's gonna help out their friends. I'm helping out my friends, they're helping out theirs. But like, again, like, my mom would have helped these people. She would have helped Dean Witcher. She would have helped Robbie Al Khalil. I feel terrible about it. I feel horrible. I feel terrible. I would have helped them out, all those years ago. I would have offered the housing myself. Like, I would have gone up to the person. Like, I've gone to take your kids to work day at UFT. I've gone to take your kids to work at Ryerson, UFT. I've gone to I've gone to take your kids to work at Ryerson, UFT. I've gone to I've gone to take your kids to work day. I've gone, just in general, like, downtown. Again, like, I don't spend time downtown, and for some odd reason, I mean, this is a whole other rant. I don't know. Sadly, a lot of these things are binary. Like, just like, again, I hate to say it, but are some people just committing crime because they're bored, because they don't have